fucking Salvia experience.
Alright, what's poppin', fellow miscreants, freethinkers, and degenerates? Today, I would like to tell you about a particular experience of mine involving a technically legal drug, being Salvia Divinorum. Though it's generally listed as a psychedelic on account of its hallucinogenic properties, I believe it to exist in a space between psychedelic and deliriant in light of its terrifying, reality-vanquishing properties. I first discovered the substance in 8th grade. I was reading up on various illicit drugs at the time, from LSD to Datura, and the thought occurred to me that there may be substances on the market with properties similar to the illegal ones I was reading up on, as I was in middle school and didn't have the slightest clue where to get any of the off-market ones. This brought me to a list of 10 substances, one of which was salvia. I'd always been particularly interested in dreams and hallucinations, so upon reading that you could transform into a tree, I was enticed. I read a few trip reports on Arrowwood, and they all sounded somewhat interesting and not too damaging, at least to the sober mind, as it is impossible to understand just how dark things can get on words alone before you've taken any substance that resembles it, and even then, you can only remember how you said it felt. That brings us to present day, where I am more than capable of acquiring just about any drug I'd like, with legal still being easier than illegal. I thought about it for a while, and then pulled the trigger on a gram of 20 times strength salvia extract. I'm going to preface this with a not very in-depth but better than nothing explanation of the nature of this drug. It was traditionally consumed in rituals performed by the Mazatec people, an indigenous group out of the Sierra Mazateca mountains of southern Mexico. They believed in its spiritual power and made use of the leaves as an aid to problem solve or visit lost loved ones. Their means of consumption was fairly simple. Grind the leaves between your teeth and keep them in your mouth until the effects are felt. That brings us to modern day, where we've industrialized and refined the process. Extracts are salvia leaves that have been reduced in size and concentrated in potency. 1,000 grams of salvia leaves produce 50 grams of salvia 20 times, while keeping intact the active ingredient salvinorin A. The leaves are already quite strong on their own, so the density of salvinorin A in any form of extract is high enough to make any attempt at moderation a task, and one that most people who ingest the drug aren't even aware of, which is why there are cases of people who have gotten diagnosable PTSD from it. With that all said, we can finally get into my own experience. I was equal parts excited and anxious upon getting the small plastic bag in the mail. Its smell was faintly aromatic with overtones of mulch. My older brother had agreed to look after me while I tripped, as this drug commonly eliminates awareness of the waking world, putting lone trippers at considerable safety risk. I went into the back corner of his bathroom with the overhead air filter running and packed the first bowl into my pipe. I went the hyper-conservative route, as I was not trying to get PTSD. I lit my quarter of a pinch and inhaled, holding my breath for 15 to 20 seconds. I felt a mild sensation that something was different, but it passed pretty quickly. I told my brother the news that I was going to be doubling the dosage for the next bowl. I did this, inhaled, and held my breath for about the same amount of time. This time around, I didn't even begin to experience the effects. Without giving my 2 bowls any real time to settle in, I packed a comparatively fat bowl, the quantity of which was, drumroll please, 1 whole pinch. I pulled the lighter out for the 3rd and final time and brought it down upon the bowl. My heart felt as though it was beating out of my chest as I inhaled as much yellow smoke as I could. I held my breath for 10 seconds, and though I meant to hold it more, the thought occurred to me that I should exhale before I forget how to exhale. Reality was now notably distorted, and it was difficult to speak. A sense of foreboding quickly grew. The last thing I said to my brother was, "I've gone and done it," and after that, my lips were sealed. I was huddled in the corner still, when all of a sudden, I had a sense that something was moving around me. I don't remember in vivid detail what they said or what they were, but I remember this much. The bathroom ceased to be one whole bathroom. Instead, it was a conglomerate made up of individual pieces of bathroom, and they were all around me, tugging and pulling and attempting to absorb me. They began to say things to me, things meant to amplify the sense of near hopelessness the drug had induced, but I continued to fight it even when I felt I couldn't stand up. Eventually, I braced on the toilet in front of me and managed to stand up. I then staggered out of the bathroom, and as I was walking, I saw my shoulder in the mirror, which now had a strip of blue and white bathroom tile running down it. I sat on the futon at the foot of my brother's bed. I began to lean my arm on a chair next to it, but having nearly been consumed by the bathroom, I decided to keep my object contact to a minimum. I was desperate to escape the experience and the things in the bathroom, so I asked him how much time had passed between me going into the bathroom and sitting on the futon, as the trip was meant to have a max duration of 15 minutes. He said 3 minutes, and I was shocked. It had hardly felt like any time at all, although time had been the least of my worries. I tried to tell him what had happened in the bathroom, but he was too busy choosing his toppings for an online sandwich order to listen, so I quickly got frustrated and gave up. I managed not to yell at him. Shortly after this exchange, a sense of profound dread crept over me as I realized I had at least 10 minutes left for things to turn on their head. It occurred to me that 10 minutes could easily become any number of minutes, and I began to feel I teetered on incomprehensible eternity. Transforming into an inanimate object, which initially struck me as curious, hell, even comedic, was now the most terrifying thing I could imagine. I gained the sense that if I were to morph into anything, it would not by any means be a smooth transition. Instead, I would feel every single ounce of excruciating pain from myself being torn apart and rearranged, atom by atom. I later explained the pain I was on the threshold of with a metaphor. Let's say the maximum earthly pain is a standard hammer brought down on you. The pain I was threatened with was more like 1 billion times 1 billion or more hammers the size of the universe being brought down upon me. I had friends who were interested, and post-trip, I told them that and one other detail, being that what I nearly experienced was retribution fitting only for the perpetrators of the Holocaust. Before I smoked salvia, I couldn't remember the last time I was purely, viscerally terrified, and I have no shortage of potentially frightening life experience. I decided I was done being with my brother and in his room. As I was leaving, he told me to take my pipe and lighter with me, and I said, I can't. I seriously cannot. And he said he'd handle them. I shut the door before deciding I should ditch the indoors entirely. I walked outside through my front door and then through my side yard to the back, where I sat on a hammock. I was still terribly on edge and no less secure than I was inside, and began to worry about neighbors seeing me fucked up in my backyard, so I walked back through the side yard, and it occurred to me that at any given moment, the ground could decide it didn't want me to make any progress and repeat itself, trapping me by means of an endless earthly treadmill. I took this into account and still walked, as I thought running might make my fear a desperate reality. I walked back through the front door, and then to the basement, where I have a heavy bag. I was going to go ham punching it to get some stress out of my system, but it occurred to me that I might still be tripping and hard, and that the bag could be a person that I'm not aware of. So I put the gloves down, walked upstairs, plugged my phone in, and flopped down on a couch. I pulled a blanket over myself and called my girlfriend, who listened to some of what I had to say and whose presence, even digitally, served to provide a foundation of mild comfort to combat the anxiety I was still experiencing. She set a 10-minute timer and the trip faded shortly afterwards, leaving me grateful to not be permanently scarred. Throughout the trip, I had all been mentally begging the drug, whom I addressed as Lady Salvia, having read it somewhere, for mercy, and though the experience embodied every negative emotion from dread to fear to anger, I was thankful that it ultimately decided to have mercy on me. I feel that had I inhaled for a fraction of a second longer, packed a fraction of an amount more, or held the lighter any closer, it would have broken me. I believe it only decided not to smite me because I at least attempted to respect the drug and moderate. As the trip came to an end and the doors in my mind began to close, I could all but hear Lady Salvia scream, "And stay out!" And though the bag, with not even a tenth of the material used, still remains in my drawer to this day, I am more than happy to comply. I want to end with an important message. Though experiences on any drug vary, and this is no exception to that rule, are you willing to bank your very sanity on a chance of dodging eternal, soul-killing suffering? Thank you.